guitar players learn a blues progression at some point. Sometimes even a beautiful one, like Nobody Knows When You're Down and Out by Jimmy Cox. But then the real question appears. Once you've learned them, what do you actually do with it? Of course, you can just play the chords. But if you want to take it to the next level and actually play a solo, you usually need a backing track or another guitarist. Today, I want to show you something different. By the end of this video, you'll be able to play the bass, the groove, and a blues solo at the same time. In other words, you become your own backing band. And the crazy part is, the foundation is much simpler than it sounds. So let's build it step by step. First, this is the chord progression of the song. Beautiful chords, amazing sequence. But just playing the full chords is not something that will keep you excited forever. So instead, we reduce everything just to the bass notes. And suddenly you create space for solo. Let me show you. You isolate the lowest note of each chord, and then we turn this into a groove. Think like a drummer. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2. On 2 and on 4, we add a snare sound. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And just like that, you already have a blues rhythm section, no bend required. Now comes the fun part. Once the bass and groove are happening, you can start adding solo notes in between. But we're going to make this ridiculously simple. Take the A minor pentatonic scale, for example, in the first position. But instead of the whole scale, we only use these 3 notes. Now watch what happens when we combine everything. That is already a blues solo with your own groove. But there's something important here. What I just played was improvised. What you heard at the beginning was not. It was partially improvised and partially planned. A lot of guitarists think great players are improvising everything, but that's not entirely true. Think about your favorite movie scene. Even the greatest actors do not rely purely on improvisation. They use a script, and within this script, there is space for riffing. The guitar works the exact same way. Improvisation shows what you can already do, but writing things down helps you discover ideas you would never randomly play. And if you can't accompany yourself soloing at all yet, this is how you start. This is exactly how I built the solo for this arrangement. Some parts are free, some parts I wrote using Soundslice, an amazing free tool. I teach you how to use this tool in a free tutorial linked below so that you can make the most of this channel. This combination unlocks new abilities. Now here's where things get interesting. Look at the first 3 chords of this progression. C major, E major 7, A major 7. These chords don't belong to the same key, so the harmony moves around quite a bit. Blues players often do something unexpected. Instead of chasing every chord, they keep one common scale across the whole progression, like you saw me doing with the 3 notes of A minor pentatonic. And the whole progression still works. But there are moments where you can make it sound even better by adding notes of each chord that you don't find in this one single scale. For example, in A major, you have these 2 notes that are outside A minor pentatonic. You can play these notes here, but also in this position. So when you're soloing, you can go to one of these to make A major stand out as a chord. I use this concept to write, not improvise, but to write what you will hear now. See if you can tell the difference when we take a look at just the first 2 bars. Notice three things happening. First, the bass note keeps the harmony moving. Second, I'm using a higher position for the A minor pentatonic. This here. Third, I'm using notes outside of the scale when they're present in the chord. So the first two bars go like this, played slowly. So you play these two notes here at the same time. A string on the 3rd fret, B string on the 4th fret, sliding it with your pinky towards the 5th fret. And then using a bar with your index finger, you play the 1st string on the 3rd fret. Thumb slap, muting everything. And then I'm using here one note of the scale, here, plus the two notes that only belong to E major. It results in this D major shape here, a whole step higher. And I play it in an arpeggio manner, not all at the same time, like this. Open bass twice, thumb slap. Now, with a bar shape, I slide onto the 5th fret, from the 4th to the 5th. Open bass A. I already have my finger there on the B string, 5th fret. And now I have a note on 2. Having a note on 2 means it's during my snare beat. So I'll do this. I mute everything I don't want with my left hand. And with the right hand as well, having my wrist very close to the guitar like this. So everything. D string, 7th fret, open bass A twice, thumb slap. Notice that I'm using a different position for A minor pentatonic on the 2nd bar. Plus this note here, C sharp, which is present in A major but not in A minor. You see that I leave some gaps in between notes. That space is incredibly important because it keeps the groove clear. It lets it breathe. Now let us add the next session. Slowly it goes like this. I'm using for this part these two positions of A minor pentatonic, 5th fret, just as before, and 7th to 8th fret. That's where I got the notes from. And this F here doesn't belong to neither of these scales. It belongs to D minor, and that's one more example of making the chord stand out by playing a note that's not part of the key. I start with a slide here from the 5th towards the 6th fret on the B string, open bass, pull off towards the 5th fret, snare note here, muting everything you don't want. You can do like this with your left hand touching the strings very lightly. 5th fret, 3rd string, open bass twice. Here, snare note, my index finger mutes everything. I slide onto the 9th fret from the 7th. And then to the 10th fret and back. And then back to the 7th fret. And then the next bar starts with an open D. On 2 of the next bar, you see the snare note here. Again, mute using your index finger, touch the strings very lightly, and fret the note really with your ring finger. 10th fret, high E string, B string 10th fret, high E string, 10th fret. Open bass twice, thumb slap. Now the first 4 bars slowly. The most special part of this harmony comes in the next 2 bars. The bass goes up chromatically, that is 1 half step at a time, from F to F sharp, and then to G, and then A. I didn't go crazy here with many notes. The G sharp in this case is just an ornament. Like the amazing Victor Wooten likes to say, you're always a half step away from the correct note. That's really true. You can almost always get away with visiting notes 1 fret apart. So these 2 notes at the same time, and F on the low E string on the 1st fret, and an A, G string 2nd fret, into a pull off towards the G sharp we talked about before. Snare note, 2nd fret G string, B string open, and now these 3 notes at the same time. E string 2nd fret, G string 2nd fret, and B string 1st fret. This is an F sharp diminished. And then a pull off with the bass at the same time. So. This is a D, 3rd fret of the B string, and then the next bar, I slide with these 2 fingers, ring finger, 4th fret, 4th string, 2nd string, pinky on the 4th fret as well, index finger here on the low E string, 3rd fret, I slide with these 2 fingers. And then 4th fret again, sliding backwards now towards the 3rd fret, slapping. Same shape on the 2nd fret. Open bass twice. 2nd time with the 1st string open. And in the last 2 bars of the progression I did this. I'm mixing 2 D major shapes here. This here. Absolutely love this chord. And this one here. This is a D major inverted with the 5th on the bass. That is the A here is the lowest note. And here, a D7. You'll see I start here on the 3rd fret of the B string, one of the notes of this chord. Open bass, G string 2nd fret, again, one more note of this chord. Snare note here on the 3rd fret, going towards the 4th fret of the 4th string. Again, one more note of this chord. This is an ornament, a chromatic ornament, as we talked about before. D string open. And here I slide onto the 5th fret of the A string. And I have these chord notes here. The same ones we have here with a different fingering. And with the chord G, I basically only solo with 2 notes, these 2 here, and this chromatic extension here. So both bars. Now that you know the pieces, let me play the whole arrangement slowly. The real goal here is not memorizing one solo. The real skill is learning how to build your own versions. If you want to make this process easy, become a full access or an elite member on my Patreon, linked below. Eventually, you'll start creating your own solos while the groove keeps going. And this is where the guitar becomes incredibly fun. So the next time you learn a chord progression, don't just ask what these chords are. Ask the better question, how can I turn this into my own blues performance? If you want to jam like this, but even easier with only open bass notes, watch this video next.